Hi there, my name is Terry, and welcome to another episode of the Animation Industry Podcast. This chat is with a very well-known animator in the Canadian stop-motion scene, and his name is Dave Thomas. In fact, I like to consider him part of Canadian stop-motion history because he's touched so many projects over the last few decades. And today, our chat is going to cover what he's worked on through the years and his best advice for those pursuing stop-motion animation in today's marketplace as well. But Dave's passion for animation goes beyond just stop motion, as he's directed award-winning series, specials, show opens, and commercials created in an array of techniques and animation mediums. His list of projects include work for Disney, Warner Brothers, Nickelodeon, ABC Family, MTV2, CBC, Teletoon, the HBO Family, and Fisher-Price. He's even given talks at colleges, schools, and panels on animation, and he currently mentors fourth-year animation students at Sheridan College through their final thesis films. So let's jump right into the chat. Hi, Dave. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good, thanks. How are you?
Excellent. Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised we haven't crossed paths before, seeming as you mentor at Sheridan and you've animated in Toronto and all these other things. So I'm super happy that we're finally chatting and we connected.
Well, that's because I only come out at night, Terry.
Oh, okay.
I'm totally joking. But, animators are not often seen in daylight, are they?
Yeah, right. You're just locked in a room. So, yeah, I kind of consider you now kind of a pivotal piece of stop motion in Canada because you've been involved in so many projects for so many years. So looking back, what was the first inkling you had that you would be perfect for the world of stop motion?
It's funny. Back in the day, I really had no plans or future interest in working in animation. It really didn't even cross my mind. Originally, actually, I wanted to go into physics, and at some point decided I think I'll have more fun in film. So I went into film production, media arts, film, photography, video. But when I was in school, my first year, I began to experiment with plasticine animation. Became friends with somebody else in the program who had done some stuff in high school, and I always liked Gumby and David and Goliath, so I always liked stop motion, but the idea of actually doing it just never crossed my mind until the beginning of college. Began to plunk around with it, and I found I really kind of liked it because for me it was this perfect marriage of the principles and elements of live action, sets, lighting, cameras, all
physics.
That kind of physics, exactly. And also the complete control of frame by frame animation. And so we just sort of made a couple Super 8 films in the first year, and I really liked it, which is weird because I don't actually like the feeling of plasticine on my hands. I don't like the stickiness and the gumminess. Never played with it as a kid. So go figure, in college, I start playing with plasticine.
So you loved it enough why did you love it so much that you decided to pursue it as a career? Like there wasn't a ton of opportunity, especially in Canada here.
No, well, even that is a bit of a stumble. I mean, I often say I kind of tripped into my career, frankly, because I continued with the live action schooling and focusing on that. And then when school finished and I was, as you do, looking for work, it was one of those years that was a little on the low end for stuff. And I literally, this is back in, pre-internet days, I'm out there with a duffel bag full of CDs and VHS tapes trying to find work and going to every production company I could find. And eventually I began to think, well, maybe, I should backpedal, I guess. When I was in second year, I did a split live action stop motion clay film to finish off my second year of film production. And I had the extreme good fortune of having it sold to HBO, which was...
How does that happen?
Well, I mean, luckily one of my film instructors reminded me, you should try getting your film. There was a distribution center for Canadian independent films back then. So I met with them and they took the film and they said, yeah, well, we'll accept it and we'll try to shop it around for you. And literally a week later, I get a phone call from the center saying, yeah, we just made a film sale for you, and it's for HBO. I mean, I was 20, and I'm not talking. We're not talking mega wealth here. I think the sale, I basically broke even the cost of making the movie. So
Well,
I
that's
thought,
amazing. I
but
mean, most students don't make any money off of their
well,
films.
all I know is I ran around the backyard for about 10 minutes thinking I was the next Steven Spielberg, which
Well,
Anyway, moving forward, when I graduated school, after trying to find work in the live field and video production, that sort of thing, I thought, well, maybe I'll just try a long shot and start hitting animation studios and see what happens. And again, I don't even know, frankly, why they hired me at the time, because I ended up getting hired as a production assistant at a studio called Lightbox Studios that did traditional 2D animated productions, primarily commercials. And I walked in the lobby for thinking I was just going to drop off a CV. And it turns out they had me booked in for an actual interview with the owners. And I walk in this reception room full, like there was like 5 or 6 other people waiting for their interviews. And there was all this beautiful cell work on the walls from Dare Bear commercials and Zeller's commercials. And I thought, oh man, I haven't got a chance. So what actually happened was, I think it totally relaxed me. I had no expectations whatsoever. I met with the owners. We had a really great conversation. They asked me to come back 2 days later, and then they hired me. So I did a PA's job, and sort of thus began my illustrious career in animation. Now, again, it wasn't stop-mo,
yeah.
but it was work and it was industry, and I learned about exposure guides and pencil tests and all this stuff, which because I didn't go to school for it, I didn't really know what it all meant. So it was a great learning curve for me.
Nice.
And then meanwhile, began to work on an independent film idea with another friend of mine, and we got a film grant from the Ontario Arts Council to make this film called Rodent Stew, which is a stop motion film with there's some blended stuff. It's mostly stop mo clay, but there's also scenes with some 2D characters and 2D effects. And so I quit my first studio job and just dived into the film full on. And
So, just I want to jump in and say that I looked up the Canadian Filmmaker Distribution Center, and it still exists.
oh,
And so it was founded in 1967. Their website's a little iffy, but I guess you can still submit your film and see where it goes.
well,
Um,
you should check the catalog and see if Rodent Stew is still
yeah. So
there.
let's jump back into Rodent Stew. So you had a job, and
Yeah,
then you decided to quit it to work
yeah,
on a film. So if I got this straight, you were super anxious to find a job
yeah.
in animation. You had like a duffel bag full of CVs that you were handing out. You got a job as a production assistant, and then you quit it to then be on your own to make your own film. Like what
Yeah,
what
I mean,
what was going through your mind?
I never claim to say that I made always the logical choices. Wanted to do my own work. I felt, and I'll tell you, the Rodent Stew, the film I did in college, the Clay Dreaming, the one I sold to HBO. I mean, that one, I knew the rudiments of animation, but that's about it. It was totally seat of the pants filmmaking. If there's students out there, do not listen to what I'm about to tell you. But I basically skipped my last month of classes in second year, stayed home and shot the film. Don't do that, students. It's not advisable, but they were lenient with me when I was in school. Finished the film. And so I shot this about 4 minutes of animation in about a month. So
Wow.
Rodent Stew, I thought was going to be about a 6.5 to 7 minute long movie. So I figured, it'll take me maybe 6 or 7 months to make this film. Well, because I had no producer working with me, I kept embellishing and embellishing and adding this and adding that. and the film ballooned out to be almost 17 minutes long. So it
Yeah,
took me
I've
a little
watched
longer.
it. It's incredibly stylized, and like the stuff you accomplished, even for today's standards, is quite amazing.
Well, thank you. And that's the thing. I mean, I count it as my animation, somewhat education, if you will, because
Right.
I had no internet to go to. I had no video assist. I had no computer toggling. It was all shot in 16 millimeter film. So sometimes it would be weeks before I saw the footage, whether I knew my scenes had worked out or not. I hand did all my dope sheets and I hand wrote out absolutely everything that was moving under frame, literally like character head, arm, finger, hand, foot, cat, mouse, whatever. And
Yeah.
I would animate each element, click the camera to advance the frame or two, and then check mark character head, hand, foot, mouth, cat, mouse, whatever. Next frame, and so it went. And all the pretty much except for cross dissolves for transitions, all the other effects in the film are burned into the original negative. So I had a key that I could rewind the film, and I would carefully count back, 24 frames, 48 frames, whatever. And then I would do second and third passes. I built my own matte box, so I
Oh
could
my
do
goodness.
clock wipes or vertical wipes, so I could have a farmyard scene. And if I wanted to have a clock wipe into the next scene, I would have my A mats clock wiping to pure black. Then I would cap the camera, shut down the studio lights, or cap the camera, change the entire set, which could be 2 days, 3 days, whatever. And then I would wind the film back 24 frames and then use my B mats, which is the clock wipe in reverse, to reveal the next set. And if I did my measurements and counting correctly, it would be seamless on the original negative.
Some
Um,
of those terms that you said I've never even heard of before. I
you'll have to Google some.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
feel like the expression "where there's a will, there's a way" is exactly what you're describing. It. We have it
well,
way too easy now.
I mean, I love it because for me, I love problem solving and I love finding innovative, also low tech or whatever works ways to solve problems. Or, like my mother would laugh because if things went missing around the house, she would assume that was on set. And I would hear, I can't find the colander. And I would say, I'm using it for some lighting. I'll have it
Right.
back to you in 5 weeks, that sort of thing.
Yeah, don't make any pasta in the next 5 weeks.
Well, plus because I was shooting in my parents' basement, I was on household circuit, electricity, and I discovered that if my parents were using the laundry, the exposure values would dip with the lighting. So we had to work out a system that if I was shooting, they wouldn't do laundry till I was done because it would affect, over the shooting stop mode, you'd see light flicker. And I
Oh
mean, for
man.
me, the film does have, I mean, it's not technically perfect. There's things I would, completely do differently today and not maybe
Oh,
quite so low tech, but it was a great learning curve, and I had a lot of fun working on. Went through a lot of plasticine.
yeah,
That's for
even though you
sure.
hated plasticine. Also, your parents are gems for doing
Oh,
that.
yeah, I have to say I really have to tip my hat to my entire family actually for putting up with me for so long. Where I dominated the basement and down there quite a lot of hours day and night working
Yeah.
on stuff and
Well,
then when I became a father with my kids too. I mean, kind of the same story. Where's dad? He's in the basement. So
oh, it's not, hey Dad, don't do the laundry while we're animating.
no, not so much.
Um,
No,
I'm
no.
I'm gonna include a link to Rodent Stew in the description of this podcast because I think everybody should check it out. It's quite incredible what you accomplished, even by today's standards, I think. And every
Oh,
moment is there's a gag going on or something interesting. It's really a fun film. So
oh, thanks. Well, that's
I think
why it took so
it's
long
worth
to
checking
make because I just couldn't
out.
stop
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, well, do you think that I guess people or aspiring animators these days should be able to learn animation or specifically stop motion much more quickly because of all the technical help they get through software and cameras and stuff that you didn't have?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we found that even a bunch of years ago when I worked at a studio called Cup of Coffee Studios. We had we were gearing up for a new show, and we decided we needed new, fresh animators. So we reached out and we interviewed a bunch of students at Sheridan College, selected about 8 people we thought we just sensed something about them that they might be able to make the jump from doing 2D into stop mo, because it's a bit of a different thing, right? Different technique. And we trained them. We had several classes. We actually called it the Cup of Coffee College of Stop Motionology. Silly name, but I think I made it up actually. And we'd give them some lessons, some pointers, and let them have a puppet under camera, and then we'd go and critique. And over the course of like 2 or 3 weekends, we were seeing exponential leaps in ability. And I remember one of the fellow instructors saying to me, "Yeah, this isn't fair. It took me 5 years to figure this stuff out, and they're getting it in 3 weeks because they had us to help." Because I didn't have anybody, and neither did he. We just kind of learned on our own in basements. And they were, again, don't get me wrong, these were naturally talented people who were great innate performers and good students of animation to begin with, which is always super important. But they also had some technical advantages that we didn't have. They had the toggling of the software, the immediacy of playback and feedback. So they could, shoot a scene for 2 hours, play it on loop and go, oh, that's where it went. Oh, it
Yeah.
gets stronger here. So yeah, the feedback is much, much quicker today
Yeah.
in terms of self-education.
So I want to dig a little deeper into kind of the story of your career because I feel, well, I heard some of it before we talked, but I feel like it's kind of pivotal to how stop motion kind of developed and was portrayed in Canada history. So um so you made Rodent Stew, and then how did that end up, kickstarting your career for you now that you had this 17-minute insane playmated film entirely in stop motion, which I can't, who else in the world was doing that when you did that?
Oh, I think there's a few isolated people, working in basements, but
Yeah,
because
like
they're
three other people in the world at that time.
well, I mean, with regards to Road and Stew, when I finished it, I'm trying to think back now, as I was finishing it, because I had taken, it took me a few years to get that film done. I'll just be totally candid. And I
Yeah.
was working part-time retail, trying to bring a little bit of money in, getting this film finished. So when I went back to get back in the business, when you step out back then as well, for me it was a bit of a challenge to get back in because again, no one really knew me, right? I had purposely stepped out. So again, it was back to the whole doing phone calls and cold calls and trips to Toronto with didn't even have DVDs. I was still VHS tapes.
Yeah. Oh my
And
gosh.
I
Does that mean that studios had VHS players that you had to pop it in?
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
wow.
So, what was really awesome was the ones that had these little like 12-inch TV sets with the inbuilt VHS deck below. That
Oh.
was that was so awesome back then. Anyway, so and then again, sometimes it's a fluke. Quite literally, I got my next studio job. Actually, in between, I found out there was a TVO series, like a live to air show for youth called What? And it was like topics for youth, alcohol, parties, tattoos, themes that people in their teens and maybe early 20s would want to be, interested in. And I got involved with them, and I ended up they had a character in mind for some segments in the half-hour show called Mr. Conglomerate, who's meant to be the embodiment of big business trying to make money off the fads and interests of youth. So I got involved. I ended up doing 5 different episodes for TV Ontario, where they would have the episode theme, like I said, like music. So I would pitch the story idea, I would board it and then built animated sound effects. And then because the budget was not, wasn't very high, I actually got my father to be the voice of Mr. Conglomerate. And I'm the voice of his assistant, Hugo. And I delivered so I got a little bit of experience and under my belt doing this stuff independently, while I was still trying to finish off Road and Stew. And then when that was done, quite literally, my sister found an article in a newspaper of a guy who had a studio animating dinosaurs, like super realistic for like Discovery Channel and high-end productions. Foam latex, they looked absolutely real. And he seemed like a really cool guy. So I went down and interviewed with him. There was a guy named Hall Train, wonderful man, great guy to work with. And after, they didn't have any work immediately that I could jump into, but he allowed me graciously to go down and use his computer equipment whenever I could and play around with the puppets and get familiar with it. And then he said, when we have a production I could use your assistance, I'll bring you in, which is exactly what he did. So I got to animate. It was amazing. I lots of probably the hardest animation I've ever done, because we shot it single frame, 30 FPS, and the dinosaurs had to look absolutely alive. Like there was no, cartoony personality. They had to look legit. So,
is there somewhere online I can see these dinosaur animations?
That I don't know. It's so, the one you'd have to go digging for.
Yeah.
It was called The Ultimate Guide to T-Rex by Discovery Channel. And I wasn't just me animating. There was three of us, and I was obviously the junior guy in the crew. But it was a blast, and Hall was a great guy, and I met a couple of great friends there.
I just looked it up. The whole documentary is on YouTube. So somewhere in there
everything's on YouTube.
Is on it. If you know the timestamp, I can.
Oh, that's funny. Well, and then a couple of things we worked on there, which is kind of cool. We did some animation of the Barosaurus for the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. So I'm assuming the animation's still there, but I did go to visit one summer and saw some monitors with some animation I had done of this prehistoric fish. Hope I get the name right. Hall, if you're listening, Dunkleosteus, I think. It's this armored, bony plated fish, and some Barosaurus stuff. And then we also sculpted a full-scale Triceratops for the Islands of Adventure theme park back then.
No way.
And that was a blast. I mean, there was like 7 of us, I think. 6 or 7 of us sculpting this 24-foot long Triceratops sculpture in a warehouse at Oakville.
That's crazy. Also, by the way, your T-Rex animation is right in the first 30 seconds of the documentary.
oh my gosh, I'll have to dig it
up. So it's like, okay, so far it just seems like you were kind of just putting yourself out there and taking whatever opportunity came your way. You weren't like, I want to stay here, I want to do this specific stop motion. You're just like, anything that is related, I'll take.
That's the thing. For me, it was just I like being creative, and obviously back in the day, I really, really, really wanted to be in the industry, and as you say, I put my name out there. And when I was working for Hall, I independently approached Global Television because they had some animated bumpers for their children's programming that I thought, geez, I think I could do some of those, and I just cold called them. Hi, I do stop motion. I'd like to do some bumpers for you. And we had a few phone calls back and forth. They kindly put together, a pretty small budget, frankly, but I didn't care. I wanted the exposure and the work and all that. So I did all those in my parents' basement.
I hope they're charging you rent. Do you think
I might get a bill now?
Yeah, right. They're listening.
That's right.
Do you think that kind of strategy can still work? Because I hear a lot of people say like, oh, that's how things used to be. You can't just call anymore. You have to go through online stuff or whatever. Do you think you could just call up, I don't know, Global or a studio and say, hey, I see you've got some spots. I'd love to make some in stop motion for you. Do you think that would work?
My take on it is, I mean, maybe not, but my thing is what's it going to hurt?
Yeah.
The key thing always is to conduct yourself professionally. I mean, I know I said what I said. Hey, I could do, but when I was on the phone, I mean, obviously don't remember exactly what I said, but you carry yourself um, with interest, with professionalism, and enthusiasm.
Right.
Um, and they'll tell you I mean, obviously a lot of places I did call or met with, a lot of stuff didn't pan out. But I always even saw the ones that didn't pan out with actual work as a positive because I was meeting people.
That's true.
I firmly believe if you go in, and I tell students today too, it's you're not just marketing your skills as an artist or a technician, you're marketing yourself too. You are a huge component of what you bring to a production.
Yeah.
So it's not just about being a fantastic animator or great designer. It's important, absolutely, but presenting yourself as an engaging, interesting person, inquisitive, respectful, that's all important. And sometimes, which has happened more than once for me, like in the case of Hall, there was no work immediately, but I guess obviously we connected somehow that he considered me,
Hmm.
uh, useful, or yeah, I could see Dave maybe fitting here at some point. Why don't you come and use my stuff? And then hopefully something will work out where I can bring you in officially. And like I said, that's happened a couple times for me in the past. So
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So how do you, so say I'm approaching somebody and I'm all those things, I'm inquisitive, professional, et cetera. How do I also not reveal how amateur I guess I am in that moment too? Because, you're just starting out. How do you come across as like I have something really valuable to offer you versus like I'm gonna scramble and put this together and hope it works out?
well, I mean, that's a little bit of the dance, right? I mean, you have to also learn to read the room a little bit. You obviously don't want to lie. Don't like, I've heard stories of people saying, and it happens sometimes where you'll agree to do something and then you'll come away from a meeting and you think, great, now how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
So certainly those stories happen, and I've heard that happen. I've heard other people in the industry explain, yeah, I agreed it. Yeah, we can make 50 dancing unicorns and then leave going, my gosh, how are we going to make 50 dancing unicorns? Thing is, even though you might say you're going to do it and you don't have an immediate idea how you're going to do it, you probably have the subconscious confidence, yeah, we can figure this out. So getting back to, as you say, starting out, uh, it's um, it's a balancing act of being confident without being cocky. And plus, everyone knows, especially if you're coming out of school, everybody knows you don't obviously have a huge work history, right?
Hmm.
So there's no point in hiding that. The key thing is if you're coming out of school and you've done your 4 years at Sheridan or wherever else, if you have a great portfolio of key, let's say you want to be a background painter, some layout, present them with a nice little range of I can do, moody atmospheric, I can do graphic preschool, I can do Bob's Burgers or whatever. And then they say, oh, person's got some range. And then if you're lucky to score an interview, uh, again, it's about interpersonal relation skills. Be conversational. Try to engage them with the passion that you have for the business. I've been in hiring situations where we've been crewing up for shows, and we've hired one guy that stands out in particular. He had just graduated school. His animation was okay. I mean, it wasn't. You weren't going whoa, whoa. It was funny. It was cute. But what really impressed us was his attitude. There was just something about him that he was engaging and funny, and I don't mean clowning around and being goofy, just charming in a way. And we could see, oh, he's got some skills. He seems like a decent guy. He seems keenly interested in what we're doing. I believe in authenticity. Don't
Yeah.
give compliments on a studio or a person if you don't genuinely need it, because people can see through that.
Oh, I love
And
your work.
yeah, exactly. Oh, that's another thing too. I'll sidebar it with, do some research on the studios and people you're meeting with. Don't try to impress them with dropping, oh, I noticed you did this show and this, but just know it. So if it
Mhm.
comes up in conversation, you don't have a blank face on your face. You know that they were involved with this project or that project.
Yeah.
And then getting back to this one guy we met with, we hired him, and like his animation exponentially went like through the roof. Again, because he had the hunger and the keenness and the interest which was present in the interview. Plus, he had some natural skills.
So that it almost sounds like you're saying the interest and the keenness and all that stuff is trumps talent in some scenarios, I guess.
Well, I mean, I think again, it's a balancing act because at the
Yeah.
same time, we also need people who do know what they're doing. They have, they've got some chops. But I think, and again, there might be some pros out there who might disagree with me, but I think, in my experience, I would rather work with somebody who has skill, talent, maybe not at the absolute top of their game, but there's a keenness, there's a spirit, there's a teamwork, there's a sense of this person's going to be awesome with the group and the team. And I can see, or we can see, this person is just going to shine given the right tools and time and some, obviously fresh out of school, studios like to mentor and train and guide the juniors on the team too, right?
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference. Rather than somebody who comes along who is astounding, but is super difficult to work with. Production is stressful on the best of days, generally, deadlines and expectations, both internal and external. You want everyone you're working with to get along, friendly, cooperative, keeping everyone keeping lid on their egos as much as possible, collaborative. That's the kind of environment you want. And I've been really fortunate, frankly, in just about every studio I've worked at. I've been surrounded by super duper awesome people, really. And many of them, I mean, I think I mentioned to you earlier, like I spent a lot of years at Cup of Coffee, and at peak time, I think we had over 200, 250 people there. And we're all like super tight to this day,
That's
because we
awesome.
had we had a great time. We had foosball tournaments and costume events and general silliness and a lot of animation too. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I really can't stress enough the human elements of working in this business. It's
Yeah.
just as important to develop that side of your personality as all the technical and artistic stuff too.
Yeah. You mentioned something before about reading the room, and I know that you've been on a number of productions, you've talked to producers, you've directed, you've been in the room a lot of times. Do you have a strategy for coming in fresh and, there's a bunch of people sitting there and you don't really know them and you have to sell them something or get involved right away? How do you read the room?
Wow. I was going to tease you and say, that'll cost you extra, Terry. Uh,
Well, I'm paying, so
I'm totally kidding. You know what? That is a good question. Again, every situation you're in is different. I've been in situations where I've walked into a room, and I guess you're speaking right now probably primarily of maybe brand new clients or potential clients or first time you're working together. And I've walked into situations with people who are very poker faced, not giving out signals. Those are the challenging ones, obviously, because you don't know whether to make a small joke or play things seriously. Um, wow, yeah, feeling the room is just one of those things with experience. Um,
So,
I
so
had
do
one.
you try to create a light? Do you try to
No,
tell a joke or something? Like,
no. I mean, again, I don't. Well, I'm known for my terrible puns, but I just want to say on the record, there is no such thing as a terrible pun.
oh my gosh,
I'm sure people are groaning right now. But anyway, well, I'll give you an example, I guess.
of a
Maybe
pun or reading the room?
no, about reading the room. I had this one meeting that was set up. The guy I worked for gave me a script, read the script. We're having a meeting with this gentleman on Tuesday, and the person we were meeting with was known to be that he could be a little standoffish or a little difficult or tough. And I thought, well, okay, well, I mean, I haven't met this person before. Let's see how it goes. And I loved the script. I thought the script was great. And I'm being absolutely authentic. I loved it. I thought it was a great story. So when we met, that's the first thing I said. I said, I love this script. I read it several times. I can imagine this, and imagine this, and imagine this. And we kind of just clicked, and that kind of warmed up the room a little bit. And we got along famously throughout the production. Um, Other clients come with you, and the clients are great. I mean, client relationships are so key. It is absolutely wonderful when you have a relationship with a client that is collaborative and fun, like you're in a giant sandbox together. Having said that, directing a series or a project that is somebody else's creative, there's this, again, it's a dance or a balance. You need to become invested in it as though it's your own personal project, to love it, to do a great job at it. But you also must be respectful that you are doing this for somebody else. It's somebody else's idea, or IP or creative or whatever. So sometimes I like to think I am the distant uncle on Project X. I've come in and somebody else has created the characters of the world, and they've invited me to come in to help them, shape it. And if it's a project that I click with, I just start thinking to myself, I'm the uncle of Project Z.
I like that
And
mentality.
yeah, you have to, because for me, I always try to come from a place of authenticity, and it helps so much because again, not every project that you work on is going to be 1,000%
Yeah.
in your world, right? Some are, and then those are, you just, it's like dancing every day. And the ones which might be 970% in your world, those are important too, because it makes you grow as an artist, right?
Yeah.
If you're a person who does a lot of preschool, and you are suddenly going to be going into an adult show, your first thought might be, oh, geez, I don't know, it's not really the world that I work in normally. But then you start getting into it, and you find you kind of like this character, or you love that scenario. Oh, this is a funny little story here, and you find ways to connect with the material. And then generally by the end of it, you go, gosh, that was fun. Who'd have thought? I'd have loved doing, cannibalistic zombies from Mars, or which I don't think is a real movie, but I think should be a real movie. So
There's
again,
cannibal clowns from outer space, so that's pretty close.
close enough. Yes, close
Yeah.
enough.
I like what you said about authenticity, because sometimes I get myself wrapped up in, because like for me, pursuing an artistic career, there's all this like perfectionism mindset and impressing of other people, and like my current state of talent, and all these like thoughts that I'm constantly wrapping myself up in every conversation I have, basically about art or with people who are interested in my art and vice versa. So I like just coming authentic. Here's where I'm at. This is what I like doing. All that stuff. It's nice to hear that that works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, like I said before, it's about respecting others' opinions, being collaborative, knowing which hill to die on.
Hmm.
I remember once, early in my career, I was doing a commercial, and I think back now, I think, my goodness, how mundane and how minuscule an issue I had. But we had designed this set, and the creative director from the client side wanted to change this is going to sound absolutely ridiculous. They wanted to change the era that the tabletop radio came from. I
Oh
think
my
I
God.
had we had made like a 1930s style radio, and they wanted like a 1950s transistor. And I remember I got the note, and I was driving home that night thinking, this is an outrage. How dare they change the radio? And, see, if I had a time machine, I would go back and tell me, dude, really, come on, it's a radio. And P.S., have you looked at the rest of the set you guys designed? It's all kind of 1950s kitsch. So frankly, Dave, your 1930s radio really doesn't belong here. Breathe and realize the other idea is the smarter way to go. So,
Yeah.
but back in those days, I thought, oh my goodness, it's an outrage. And at the same time, I thought, wow, maybe I suck. Why would I choose? So, it's one of those weird double-arrowed things where you think, how dare they? And yet, man, maybe my idea was terrible. And it's not that. It's about the collaboration of ideas. I like to use, nerd alert, I like to use Star Trek as an analogy sometimes. And, Jean-Luc Picard doesn't have all the ideas. He gets them, of course, but he also turns to the people he's working with. Number one, what do you think? Wolf, what do you think? And they all give their suggestions, and it's like, we'll go with that person's idea. And again, early in my career, I realized as the director, I did not necessarily have to come up with absolutely every idea. It's a collaboration. You work with fantastic people, and they're going to come up with fantastic ideas. And then it's your job as the director to kind of go, I like this, I like that, that's a great idea, let's do that, I love it, I love it, I love it. And I found I was much, much less stressed driving home from work when I realized, being the director doesn't mean you're the dictator, right? So,
Right. So if it's your job to choose the best ideas, do you ever get someone who really pushes their idea and you have to, kindly turn them down, and
well,
there's
I
some
mean,
friction there?
yeah, sometimes, and again, that is not even about me trying to push my own personal agenda.
Mm.
Again, it always should come back to the production. What makes the most sense for the production? What makes the most sense for the story moment? The emotions, the comedy, the character. That needs to be the final litmus test of any decision that's made for a show, whether it's costume designs, props, set design, timing of a gag. It really is everything you do as a team should serve the show or the series or the special or the commercial. That is the ultimate thing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when it comes to series, especially because you live with the characters for months, if not years, you find at some point the characters kind of not necessarily take over, but they kind of dictate or they kind of let you know what works. It's a weird thing, the characters. Well, as a creator, I'm sure the characters do kind of come alive at some point, right?
Yeah,
And
their own.
you take your cues from them.
Yeah,
That's not what Mr. Apple would do. Mr. Apple always leaves to work at 3 o'clock.
yeah.
I have no idea who Mr. Apple is, but
Well, he's going to control you soon.
he's going to control
I
us.
I wanted to talk a little. So we talked about something ahead of time before this chat that I wanted to bring up, and it kind of connects with everything that you've kind of said at this point, and it's the concept of persistence. And this is especially interesting to me because coming out of high school as a young, aspiring stop motion animator, I immediately just gave up because I didn't see any opportunity in front of me. And I decided to choose something that I thought was a much more safe and structured path. So I went to business school. I got the internships. I worked downtown marketing for my career, and I worked really hard to get all those things. But there was like a path laid out that it was like if you work this hard and you do these things, you'll get there. Versus with stop motion, the path I saw just didn't exist. It was like I'm gonna have to carve this out myself, and I have no idea where to even start. But for you, you reached out to Global Kids, you had this rodent stew, you were working on dinosaurs, like you just kept, pushing and pushing and pushing, and you didn't give in to your retail job or whatnot. So I'm just wondering if you can go through why you were so persistent in pursuing this.
Um, I'm very results driven. I love a challenge, and for me, I just once I sort of made the decision that, like I said before, although it was a bit of a stumble, that I was, going to pursue at the time, especially specifically stop motion.
Mhm.
I just decided that nothing was going to get in my way. Looking for work back in those years, both live and animated. Again, this is all pre Google spreadsheets and all that sort of thing. I would make up. I still have them, I think, actually. I'd get a binder and I would draw. I'd make a grid and I would columns with studio names, studio contact numbers, studio contact person, when I phone them, when I should do a phone back, did I drop a resume off, did I meet with them, when should I call back again? And I had pages and pages of these different production houses. And again, I would also go to the phone book. This is going to sound crazy. I would go to the phone book and I would think, what is a good name for a studio? Monolith. That's a good name. And I would go through the phone book, and if I found Monolith Productions, I would cold call. Hi, I was wondering what kind of work you guys do. Well, we're, corporate video. Fantastic. Could I come in and drop off my reel? And I would go down and just drop off a reel. And it's like planting a garden. I would plant all these seeds and hope that something would come up. Now, if Monolith Productions made gloves, I would just say thank you very much and I would hang up. But I just decided that nothing was going to stop me. I would write, again, this is all pre-internet, so I would write actual little letters. And I wrote letters to Aardman out in Britain, to Will Vinton Productions, the precursor of Leica, independent filmmakers like in New York and the States. And I would just connect. And I would say, hey, I do stop motion, or I'm interested in animation, or when I was making Rodent Stew, I'm making my own film. Love your work, and I would get responses. The studios would generally send me like publicity packages, so I'd get their reels and booklets and behind the scenes stuff. Other animators and filmmakers would. One guy in particular, he actually won an Oscar in '76 for his what was it called? Jimmy the Sea. It was about Jimmy Carter, the president Jimmy Carter. And this guy's name was Jimmy Picker, actually was his name. So I wrote to him and say, hi, I'm making my own film. And he wrote back saying, so you're working on a film in your parents' basement. It's nice to see you're out of your mind. Keep it up. And, it's silly, but it actually really boosted morale. I just kept moving forward with reaching out and connecting. And, certainly like any endeavor, there were times where I thought, what am I doing? And this is taking forever. And, making that film, all my film friends were off working on CBC series and feature films. And here I am in my parents' basement making this independent stop motion movie. But it was really important. It was really important to me to finish this movie, which was that I put so much of my soul into.
Yeah, I was the whole time you were sharing the story, I was just picturing like a film montage scene of young Dave, going out on his bicycle.
It's not far
His
off, actually.
cookies.
It was little duffel bag full of VHS tapes and hastily cobbled together. Actually, I'll tell you one story about something you probably shouldn't do. I look back, I think about it, I cringe.
Oh no.
I'd finished Rodent Stew, I'd finished the TVO stuff, I think, and I was repackaging. So this is I guess leading up to my eventual hiring at Cuppa eventually. But I put together like I repackaged my CV, and part of it was a 2-page photo collage, pre-Photoshop, so literally scissored out of photographs and glued together, then photocopied, color copied, different stop motion clay models I had made from different things. And then, oh my goodness, I made like word bubbles coming out of some of the characters' mouths, and it was like, hire Dave. He's great. Dave's the guy you want. And then I took that into this folder with my actual typed resume, such as it was at the time. And I think back like, that's a little cringy.
Uh,
I thought I
I
was
think I
too.
might have done the same thing as you a couple times myself. So
I mean, I look back, I was approaching from a sweet natured perspective. It's not something I would probably suggest people today. Comes across a little quasi unprofessional,
yeah.
but I don't know. I mean, I try to have a cheery disposition in everything I do, and that was cheery. That was cheery Dave saying, "Please hire me,"
Well, I'm
literally.
sure I'm
Uh,
sure those people got a kick out of that type of resume. It certainly stood out, I'm sure.
I hope so. I mean, like I said, I met a cup of coffee, and much like with Hall, when I first met, nothing really came of it. And I guess I ended up working at the dinosaur place, and then when that finished, even my hiring at Cuppa was because they were looking for someone to do clay, and somebody on the small team they had already assembled remembered seeing me interviewed on the TVO show that I had done, that the theme was animation. So I animated a segment of this TVO episode. And then they interviewed me in my parents' basement. I had a TVO film crew in my basement. That was nuts because it's like 100 square feet. So we're like, big camera and guys with lights, and me with my plasticine. But
Just in
this
the corner.
this guy saw me and mentioned to the Cup of Coffee guys, Adam Shaheen, "Oh, I saw this guy on TV a night ago, and works in his parents' basement apparently." And Adam at Cuppa remembered me. "Oh, I know who that is." Went through his Rolodex from the interview we had a year earlier. Called me up, and I went in and began my long, great tenure at a Cup of Coffee.
What a coincidence, eh?
Oh,
So
I totally, yeah.
yeah, so cup of coffee unfortunately isn't around anymore here in Toronto.
No,
Um,
no, it was a great place to work.
yeah.
We did a lot of really, again, I can't stress the awesomeness of the people that I met and worked with there. Truly, a wonderful, eclectic mix of animators, artists, sculptors, performers. Stop mo not not obviously not being drawing based. You're working with a puppet, so in
Mhm.
many ways it's like live theater very slowly, or as I often like to say, playing with toys extremely slowly. So we had dancers and people who did martial arts and actors. We had people who had never animated before come in. We gave them some lessons, tips, and they ended up becoming fantastic stop mo people. There were filmmakers and documentarians, live action set builders who had come, who were needing a change from the live action world, came and did live action sets on like a 1/6 scale and loving it. Uh,
Sounds like an animator's paradise,
it
really.
was, it was amazing. We just did so many cool and funky projects, Christmas specials, and one of my favorite gigs. We had this, Spike TV.
Yeah.
They have their Scream Awards every year. So one year we did some bumpers and spots to advertise the Scream Awards, and the creative from Spike was that they wanted this old movie theater full of monsters. And I think we had budgeted originally like maybe for like the feature, maybe 6 or 7 monsters. Everybody on the crew got so excited. I think we designed on paper about a dozen characters. We sent them to the clients. The clients said, "Gosh, we love them all. I guess, just build the 6 that you love the most." We ended up making all of them and then more monsters on top of that because for everybody, it was a complete labor. We built this fantastic rundown, kind of like 1930s red velour seat movie theater with ornate plaster balconies and cobwebs. We had werewolves. We had a giant spider baby, body of a spider baby doll head with like mandibles and glowing eyes.
Man.
And we had one scene. Generally, as you know from stop mo, generally you're a solo animator on a scene, right?
Yeah.
Well, we had one wide shot where I think we had probably 40 puppets in the set, and there was two of us, me and this other very talented stop motion animator, a guy named Alex Gornick, fantastic animator. The two of us working in tandem with my camera shooting and his. So we divvied up the characters 2020 or whatever it was, and we'd animate our dudes, and then we'd go, I'm done. You get done? Okay, I'm done. And then we'd both duck and click the camera, stand back up, and animate again. Yeah, it was a fun place to work. Preschool, adult.
I know exactly the spot you're talking about it because it stood out in my mind all these years because I saw it way back. My only criticism is it's not longer. It's very short.
Oh, I know. I mean, I think we spent maybe 2.5 months, maybe 3 months in that production.
Wow.
And yeah, I didn't want it to end. I actually ended up making, we took 5 of the puppets. I took we had a Medusa, we had a jackalope, we had like the fly, a mummy with lobster claws, and a really cool thing called Squidbot, which looks like this alien squid with robot legs, and his air tank is actually full of liquid with yellow LED lights, so it lit up. And I posed them like the pose from the Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
And I made a movie poster. I called it the Scream Club. And then I distributed it to some of the crew members afterwards because I didn't want to let that one go. That was a really fun, ridiculous project to work on.
Yeah. So, okay, Cup of Coffee isn't around anymore, unfortunately, and it kind of feels like the state of stop motion in Canada is back to where kind of where it all began. There's a few studios kind of starting up, but it's very small. So, what do you think somebody has to do to pursue a career in stop motion if they're in Canada or Toronto or surrounding area, kind of like where you were at way back when you were, just starting out?
Yeah, I guess like all things, it's cyclical, right? I mean, I know there's a couple smaller studios that have gained some traction, like obviously stop motion departments and
Yes.
Sea Creature in Montreal.
Yes, they've both been on this
places,
podcast.
Oh, well, there you go, and they're all fantastic people. Can't say enough good things about Sea Creature and stop motion departments. But you're right. I mean, and back when I was looking around, there was Cup of Coffee, and I don't even think Headgear had quite started yet.
Yeah, Headgear's still around.
Headgear started, I think, just a little after I joined Kappa. So it's not impossible. I think the key thing is, in terms of building up the industry again, it's kind of cyclical. If there's the demand from clients, agencies, productions. I mean, I'm sure you saw in the trades that Stupid Buddy Studios is gearing up for, I think, a couple new stop motion projects out in Los Angeles.
They just put a call up for hiring.
They are, and they haven't. I visited their place a couple years ago down in Los Angeles, and they're a bunch of really fun guys and nice studio, great little studio setup too. I wanted to hang out and play with some puppets while I was there.
Right.
So they're really thrumming along quite nicely.
Okay. So you see like the wave, increasing in these recent years?
I would hope so. I mean, I think for the immediate future, it depends on whether, the size of the gigs that the local studios can get. Your other option would be most likely probably to have to consider some travel, either going out to Leica or across to Ardman. I did actually just before I was hired at Kappa, I sent a reel over to Ardman And then I got hired at Kappa, and then like 2 weeks later, I got the response from Aardman
Oh
saying,
wow.
yeah, yeah, I know, saying, yeah, we quite like your work's nice, but it was kind of like next time
Was
you're in,
that a little accent I heard?
yeah, sorry, I lapsed into it.
Don't apologize.
I have my Mrs. Doubtfire UK accent, which is,
Oh no.
you know, it's a bit vague, somewhat UK accent, but they said, next time you're in Bristol, pop in, which was not,
Nice.
we're hiring you. It's just that we'd like to meet you, but I'd already, luckily got into Kappa, so that was
Wait. They're not hiring you, but they
well,
take a flight out.
no, I'm saying they weren't saying we want to hire you. It was just like,
Yeah.
yeah, your reel's got some nice things. Next time you're in Bristol, pop in.
I
And I'm
gotcha.
thinking, okay, I'll
So
just
just
hop in
hop
my
on.
canoe. I'll just hop in my canoe and paddle across the Atlantic. Hey, I'm here. So I didn't, but I was already at Kappa and having a complete blast on it
Yeah.
was the Teletoon job, my first job at
Gotcha.
Kappa Coffee.
Gotcha.
So for
Okay.
today, I think, certainly, obviously, there's more opportunities for 2D and 3D, absolutely. And I think that to get in the industry, and if you want to work in stop mill, that's fantastic,
Yeah.
but also be prepared to work on some stuff which is not stop mill, just to get your name out there, make connections, but always keep the antenna out.
Gotcha.
And if you want to travel, I would say go for it. I mean, again, Stupid Buddy, they got some fun stuff happening there, so go down and do that, or reach out to Leica. There again, Leica's work is wonderful. And then there are other, boutique. Do some research. Again, you all got the internet today. I mean, you can research up other independents that are, in the UK that do some great stop mill work as well. Of course, none of which come to mind immediately. I don't
Right.
have any. I have no cheat notes with me, unfortunately. Um, and then also, if you have the uh, equipment and the space, work on your own stuff. Make your own shorts. Again, there's the Montreal Festival that you can try to get work into.
That's true.
It's about making connections and again, it's part of the reason why I did, Road and Stew back in the day. Is I will say, I will say I was hoping to get it in a lot more festivals than I was able to. It played at the Chicago International Children's Film Festival. It played at a festival in Houston, and it played at the New York festival, ASIFA East.
Hmm.
But a lot of festivals, and this is a cautionary tale, a lot of festivals at the time didn't accept it, and I was becoming a bit why does nobody want to show this film? And the woman who ran ASIFA back then, kindly, I got on the phone with her, and she accepted it. And I said, well, thanks for accepting the film. But can you tell me why I'm not having so much luck in a lot of different festivals? And she said, well, your film's a little long. It's almost 17 minutes.
Yeah.
Most festivals would rather screen 3 5-minute shorts than one 17-minute film. So the key takeaway here is to get your work out there as a stop motion person specifically. Do something short, do something great, do a wonderful, funny 2-minute piece that showcases your abilities, your skill, your design sense. Enter it. There's all kinds of independent festivals out there, 1-minute film festivals. Obviously get your Vimeo page going and get the word out. Join the community, join the Facebook page, and connect.
Yeah.
Um, you know, um, there's ways
Start
to
a
go about it.
podcast specifically on stop
Start
motion.
start a podcast. I was gonna say in a different time slot with yours. Of course, who does time slots anymore, right?
Well,
So
I always release these on Tuesdays, so Tuesday's my day. You can have any other.
Tuesday's your day that you drop. So there you go. There you go, stop motion world.
Yeah.
Do another
So
podcast, but Thursday mornings instead.
Yeah. So you're not currently working in stop motion, and you said before there's more opportunity in 2D and 3D. Can you just, I guess, give a glance at where you're at right now?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I still absolutely love stop mo, but I decided at some point, as much as I love it, which I do, I wanted and needed to expand my repertoire of things I'd worked on. Now at Kappa, I did do, some 2D, some Flash stuff, and some pixelated work. I actually stop motion actual actors for one project, which was interesting and cool. But I also wanted to go into other productions that were, in different media. So um, I worked at, I did 2 seasons of directing the animation for the CBC series, The Adventures of Napkin Man, which was a lot
Napkin.
of fun. And it was a Flash animated show. But again, it was kind of up my alley because it was 2D Flash against live action background plates. So a bit of a hybrid thing, which, I love the aesthetic. It's miniature dioramas and 2D characters designed a bit like Schoolhouse Rock. So, a bit of a departure. Um, I worked on a co-production where I was in charge of 5 writers to do the scripts. So, sort of story editing and story consulting and managing the team and that sort of thing. So that was completely not, in my experience kit. So it was kind of learn by doing sort of thing. And that was a fantastic experience. And currently I'm working at a studio in Hamilton called Pipeline, which is a 3D and 2D studio. And, I jumped in, I worked on a 2D show called Fangbone, which was a lot of fun. Crazy barbarian kid from another planet and wizards and monsters and magic, and it was a lot of fun. And then co-directed a show that we just finished for Nickelodeon called Sunny Day, which is a hybrid 3D 2D show, Harmony and Maya. So again, a lot of challenges there. It's a half-hour preschool show, which is a little unusual. Most of them are 11 minutes for stories.
Yeah.
And it just opened me up to a whole different way of working and different people, and that's important to me is the people I'm working with and the projects I'm working on.
Nice.
I like working on projects that are interesting or cool or fun or have something positive or important to say for the world. So,
So
don't get me wrong though, I still sculpt on the side. I still have some clay characters I've been working on, and
well, then perhaps this is a good question. What would it take for a studio that is primarily focused on 2D or 3D to invest in a stop motion project? I mean, you have the best of both worlds in your mind. You worked on full stop motion productions. I'm sure you're familiar with budgets and things like that on stop motion, and you've produced 2D and 3D shows. So what would it take for a studio to say yes to a stop motion project and put that in their workload?
well, I mean, again, it comes down to the project itself. Some projects, as you know, work better in certain mediums
Mm-hmm.
over another. So the specifics of what the show is, some just work better as a 2D. Some work better
Yeah.
logistically, especially for series TV, where it's all about trying to be as creative as possible in the schedule that you've got and the budget you've got. So sometimes 3D is the way to go, but stop motion, I think it's again, it's a bit, each situation is different. It's the aesthetic, it's the story, and whether the studio feels, especially if they're branching out into it,
Yeah.
the outlay of equipment. Now, again, equipment wise, I mean, it's not cheap, obviously, but it's better than what it used to be in terms of, DSLR camera, the Dragon Frame software,
Yeah.
desktop Mac or whatever you're using, and the LED lights have changed the game too, right? They don't
Mhm.
have these humongous set. Well, one experience I had, we were renting like live action film lights to light my clay set in August, and it was melting the clay a little bit. So
Well,
you don't get that with the LED lights anymore, which is fantastic.
well, you don't get that in 2D either. You models
Well,
out.
this is true. I mean,
So,
again, I
okay,
think
so, but all the things you just said, like, what if a good project comes along where the aesthetic makes sense? Is it mostly the investment in the equipment that's preventing a studio from doing this?
yeah, I'd say so to some degree. I'd say it's the investment because again, if you're a studio that is primarily 2D or 3D or a mix, I
Yeah,
mean, obviously you're set up with Cintiqs and you've got the licenses for the software, and you know also you've got the personnel who this is what they've been either
yeah.
schooled or
You've
experienced.
got
And if
economies of scale in all your what you have already.
right, so if you're going to branch out and go into stop mo, there is that initial hump of okay, so we need to find studio space to shoot. We need to get the camera gear and the software and the startup hard costs, or lighting grids if you're going to go that far. I mean, Cuppa for years we didn't have lighting grids; it was all stands, right?
Hmm.
And then as the productions got a little bigger and more long term, we began to put actual grids and curtains and all. Well, we always had curtains, but putting the grids in and all that.
So
Um,
are people pitching stop motion shows all the time? It's just that they never get picked up, or are people not even pitching them either?
well, again, it's all cyclical. Like I've heard, a couple years ago that some of the streamers at the time were like not interested in stop mo because the icons on the Netflix page, if someone sees stop mo, they're gonna just go right past.
Hmm.
I personally think, I think it's the content and the design that's gonna grab you time and time again. Um, again, it's don't forget when saying how things are cyclical. I remember in '93 when Jurassic Park came out. There was articles: "Is stop motion dead? Is
Yeah.
this the death of stop motion?" Of course, that's the same year that Nightmare Before Christmas came out, 4 or 5 months later, and
Yeah.
everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, stop motion is fantastic!" So it really is like it's this undulating wave of people think it's really cool. I think personally, uh, especially again with the announcements from Stupid Buddy and the ever increasing quality uh, and the changes in artistic scope from Leica, I think it's kind of on the upswing again. I think everyone, for me, I mean, obviously, I guess I'm biased since it's what I kind of started out with. I I can't understand why as long as it's interesting, engaging designs,
Yeah.
why you wouldn't like it. Because for me, I've always thought, the very first thing we're kind of aware of as young children are the toys we play with, the stuffed animals, the little action figures, whatever. We all pretty much have some form of that experience. And so when you're playing with little sets and puppets, there's this, I think, immediate tactile feeling of I've been here before, and then
Yeah.
you're watching it come to life, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's always
Totally.
what's engaged me about the medium. I love watching little objects that I've either created or someone else has beautifully fashioned, and I have a hand in bringing these monsters or trolls or heat miser or snow miser to life. Um, and
All the
again,
concerts.
I mean, yeah, right. Pipeline is involved. Pipeline has a studio. I think they just made the announcement in Kids Screen a couple days ago. I think uh, from Chile that they now working. They own Zabastico, and Zabastico does stop motion. They have a show called Paperports. You should look it up. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. And again, there's an intrinsic charm to it because it's all paper, real paper. or paper aesthetic.
Yeah, and
And
the stuff they do with it is really neat because
it's
it's like
yeah,
origami sometimes, and
exactly. And when you're watching the show, and again, I think this is part of the appeal of stop mo. You can be engaged in the production. You're watching the story. You're falling in love with whatever's going on. But there's always part of your brain which knows I'm watching actual articulated toys on a miniature set dance or drive cars or chase dinosaurs. And whether it's a subconscious thought or a barely conscious thought, for me, that is part of the enjoyment of stop mo, which you don't get that from 2D or 3D.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
it's
like
a
an
different
extra element.
it's a different love with those mediums, but stop motion just has its own unique, engaging appeal.
Yeah. So, you're not working on any stop motion productions other than your own personal work. What's next for you now? Are you
Uh,
gonna make a short film?
well, I mean, I always have great plans. I have one short film idea I've had for about, oh my goodness, 7 or 8 years now. I actually, like all filmmakers and creative people, I got a few scripts in the back pocket, and I'm sure you do as well. I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that, I want to do this, but there's one I'd like to do which is very short. It is stop mo. Um, I could probably turn it around fairly quickly. So I'm kind of tinkering with doing that because, like I said, it's been a little while since I've been under camera,
Yeah.
and I sort of warm up the chops, as it were. And then, in terms of working, I'm just launched into a new series, co-directing a new series at Pipeline. So that's and it's a great, fun project too. It's 2D, but charming designs, charming content, great characters. So that'll be keeping me amused and entertained for the next little while.
Yeah, and you have to share the progress somehow.
Oh, it's all top secret, Terry. I had to read the script and then put it in the shredder right away.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
Um, so maybe to wrap things up, what would you say to someone who's interested in pursuing a career in stop motion? I know you've kind of, this whole podcast has been like a flood of advice. But what's the one thing you want to nail down?
Uh, well, Nike took it, but just do it. No,
Okay.
I'm not to be flippant. I mean, really, if you have a passion for it, um, you're at a place today with so many options for learning tips from online courses. Uh, I see Creature mentioned theirs, right?
Yeah. The Sea Learn Academy.
That's and yeah, I'll tell you, you can't find. I'm gonna do a little shameless plug for Dale and Sylvie. You can't find two better people as instructors. Truly, the work they do is fantastic. They're great people. They're super fun. Be a sponge and learn from them. With the Dragon software, I know it's for your starting out, it might seem a little pricey. It's not super terrible.
I believe
I mean,
there's
there's
a
other
1 month free trial on there or
and
something.
exactly, get the free trial. Make sure you got some things to animate first so you can maximize your month's trial. But don't even, if you're starting out, don't even get too stressed about, oh, I don't have proper lights and things. Road and Stew was lit, I'm not kidding, with 60-watt light bulbs, 7-watt night lights, and I went to Canadian Tire and bought 3 or 4 100-watt outdoor flood lamps, and that's what the film was lit with.
Flood
And I mentioned,
lamps.
because they were 100 watts, they
Yeah.
had more oomph to them. So all of the exterior skies, I had like a hanging piece of acrylic, and then 3 or 4 flood lamps on the floor aimed up to make the sky, lit.
Nice. Yeah.
And like I said, my mother's colander, which went missing for 4 months. There were a couple desk lamps which went missing too, because they could articulate, like could get it posed just so to light the. So don't let your low tech stop you if you're starting out. Just heck, if you want to practice, grab some fairly decent action figures that you can trust. That's a key thing. If you're going to animate something like an articulated character, make sure it's got some robust joints so you're not constantly fighting it, like the arm keeps dropping. That'll frustrate you no end. Or go online and learn how to make super duper simple wire, epoxy or wire aluminum block armatures for puppets.
Yeah.
Some of the best puppets I've ever worked with, where I think I showed you an image last week, where carved from pink foam, wire and plumber's epoxy joints to bond like the spine together, whatever, and 3/4 inch tie down screws, and then the body, the pink foam head and body pieces were then gessoed and patinaed with tissue paper and that. And to this day, still some of the best puppets I've ever worked with. Armature wire, go to get proper armature wire from Sculptor Supply.
I've only ever used dollar store wire, and then
works.
It breaks after 20 frames of use. So yes, armature wire.
It doesn't have the tensile strength, right? But heck, again, Rodent Stew. Again, I didn't even know the word armature back then. I knew they needed it needs a skeleton to hold it up. Yeah. So all of their skeletons was stove wire. I got this black stove wire and styrofoam, and I just kind of made it work as best I could. Coat hangers. I used coat hangers for rigs with fishing line to fly. There's one scene in Rodent Stew where the toad jumps off a pot, like a big kitchen cauldron pot, and it kind of flies through the air. And it was mounted. I know what I had. I had picked up from a garage sale a couple of microphone stands that had adjustable arms. I could lock the arms and they could extend out or retract. So I used those as character flying rigs. I would hook the fishing line to the end of where the microphone would sit, wedge the fishing line with wires into the back of the puppet, and then animate the microphone arm to fly them in and offset. Ridiculously low tech. And to this day, I still love finding low tech solutions for under camera things. Or I still build occasionally maquettes. I built a few maquettes at Pipeline for some development pitches, and I grabbed some foam core and balsa wood and some Sculpey, and I'm down here with hot glue, and I'm happy for hours just building, little diners or bistros or whatever.
I think that's part of the appeal of stop motion too, is you get to be so handy and creative in the materials you find and use and everything.
It's true. I like really being hands-on, so I love actually the sweater I'm wearing right now has got several shades of. It used to be one of my good sweaters. Now there's just like
that's one of your bad sweaters.
Yeah, it's got just acrylic paint everywhere.
Well, it's too bad we're not filming this with video. Otherwise, everybody could see.
No, my wife is probably pleased that we're not filming. She'd be like, "Why are you wearing that sweater? What's wrong with you, man?" I would just say, if you have the desire to pursue it, pursue it. Don't think it's impossible. It's impossible if you don't actually start. That's the only guaranteed way that you'll never get where you want to be, is if you let yourself stop you. Yeah. Just now I'm going to steal Nike's. Just don't do it. Do it. Follow, again, a very small story. It's also stop motion related. The film I did in college, which I mentioned, the Clay Dreaming movie. Mm-hmm. Because it's partly live action. The live action scenes were shot at the Sheridan library. And I had to go in to get permission to shoot on the weekend. And the library, whoever, would only give me 1 hour. And I was thinking at the time, that is not enough time. I need at least 5 hours probably to shoot all the scenes. And she's like, well, you have an hour. And I left thinking, oh my gosh. Well, there goes that. That's just, I can't possibly do it. And I remember sitting down in the hall slumped thinking, Well, there goes the film. And then I decided, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go in and shoot. And who knows? Maybe they won't even check up on me. So I booked actually one of my friends unfortunately had to bow out the morning of the shoot. So I got to the school and he couldn't show up to shoot actually because I'm actually in the film. So I needed someone to run the camera. And so I phoned my mother.
Oh,
and
no.
My mother came out to the college and I showed her how to use the 16 mil camera. And my mother was the camera woman for quite a few of the scenes.
Man, your parents are involved. Are they still helping you out at Pipeline?
If I could find a way, well, they've been super super duper helpful throughout the years. But my point was, so I went to this library to shoot, and I was being mindful. Oh my gosh, security is going to kick me out. Oh my gosh. No one came. I think I spent like 6 or 7 hours there. I got all the shots I needed, and then I moved on. But I could have very easily decided the day before, well, I guess that's that. And I didn't. Take a chance. A lot of it, seat in the pants flying. It can be nerve-wracking, but it's also super exciting. And at the end of the day, if that's what you really want to do, just go and do it. Go and do it. Go and give it a shot.
Well, I love that attitude, and I think that's a good place to wrap things up on. Just go and do it, because just do it is already taken.
Yeah, it's trademarked. I don't want the Nike lawyers to go like, Mr. Thomas, you must cease and desist.
Well, they'll come after me, not you. I'm publishing the podcast.
Point. Yeah, and I couldn't use the phrase "go for it" because that's so 1986.
Oh my gosh.
I wouldn't want to bring that one back. So.
Well, well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was a real pleasure to have you on, Dave. I'm surprised you didn't make more puns, though.
Oh, well, we could start over. Let me direct you to my pun site because it's punderful.
Okay, there we go.
I'm sorry, that's like a 2 out of 10 even for me.
Oh,
that was
no.
awful.
I can't wait to hear a 10 out of 10 from you.
Well, the rest, trust me.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Terry. I don't often get a chance to blah, blah, blah about me, myself, and I, and not have people tell me to stop talking. So.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I found your story so interesting because it's so intertwined in all these like coincidences and random occurrences, and like I grew up on TVO and like Global and all these things too. So it's been fascinating to just hear how your career went, specifically in stop motion, because I'm a huge fan.
Well, thanks. So, and maybe, I don't know, maybe the fates are going, we keep throwing obstacles down and he keeps finding a way around it. What is it with this guy?
He won't not give up.
Yeah. Keep moving forward. No, it was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the medium. It's always fantastic to have a chat with somebody else who, not only loves animation in general, but stop motion in particular.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we will have many, many more chats about this.
I'm sure we will.
And I hope I see you around at Sheridan College sometime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Swing by the my mentor group and hang out and say hi.
I will. And if you're listening and you'd like to get in touch with Dave, you can reach him at his email, which is dthomas187@kojiko.ca. And I'll include a link to that and his film Rodent Stew in the description of this podcast too. So make sure you give that a watch. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening. Okay, bye.